Question 1. The evaluation methodology shows that a security supervisor is alerted to a potential policy violation by an employee. The supervisor has reason to believe the employee may have accessed sensitive company data inappropriately using their personal mobile device while at work. The supervisor needs to determine the most legally sound and ethically appropriate course of action to investigate this potential breach. Option A. Inform other employees about the suspected violation and the ongoing investigation to gather informal witness accounts. Option B. Immediately confiscate the employee's personal mobile device and conduct a full forensic examination to ascertain the nature of the data accessed. Option C. Assume the employee has committed a serious offense and immediately suspend their access to all company systems pending a full investigation. Option D. Request the employee to voluntarily provide access to their personal mobile device for review, explaining the purpose of the request and obtaining written consent if granted. The correct answer is B. Immediately confiscate the employee's personal mobile device and conduct a full forensic examination to ascertain the nature of the data accessed. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for security supervisors, balancing the need for effective incident response with strict adherence to legal and regulatory frameworks governing evidence handling and privacy. Professional challenge lies in making immediate decisions that could have significant legal ramifications if not handled correctly, requiring a nuanced understanding of the applicable laws and company policies. The correct approach involves a systematic process that prioritizes legal compliance and the integrity of potential evidence. This approach is right because it aligns with the principles of lawful evidence collection and preservation, which are critical in any investigation. Specifically, it respects the rights of individuals involved and ensures that any collected information can be admissible in legal proceedings. This is underpinned by regulations that dictate how evidence must be obtained, stored, and disclosed, often requiring consent or a warrant for access to private information and mandating chain of custody for physical or digital evidence. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, unauthorized access to an employee's personal device for investigation purposes fails to respect privacy laws and data protection regulations. Such actions could lead to legal challenges, disciplinary action against the supervisor, and render any discovered information inadmissible. Another incorrect approach, which involves sharing sensitive information about the incident and the investigation with unauthorized personnel, violates confidentiality agreements and data privacy laws, potentially exposing the organization to legal liability and reputational damage. Finally, an approach that neglects to document the incident and the steps taken, or does so inadequately, undermines the investigative process and can create legal vulnerabilities by failing to establish a clear record of events and actions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the scope of the incident and identifying potential legal implications. This involves consulting relevant company policies, legal counsel if necessary, and the specific regulatory framework governing security operations and data privacy. The process should prioritize lawful means of investigation, respect for individual rights, and meticulous documentation at every stage. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that the security team's response times to non-critical incidents have increased by 15% over the last quarter, and there is a noticeable dip in proactive patrols. As a certified security supervisor, you are tasked with implementing strategies to improve performance. Considering the principles of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which of the following approaches would best foster sustained improvement and ethical conduct within the team? Option A. Introduce a new performance-based bonus structure that rewards officers for achieving specific, measurable security outcomes, such as a reduction in minor breaches, and simultaneously invest in training programs that enhance officers' investigative and problem-solving skills. Option B. Focus on implementing a strict disciplinary policy for any perceived slowdown in response times or patrol activity, coupled with a system of demerits for minor infractions. Option C. Implement a tiered bonus system directly tied to the number of non-critical incidents responded to within a target timeframe, alongside a public recognition program for officers who consistently exceed patrol quotas. Option D. Increase the frequency of mandatory overtime for all officers, with a small hourly bonus to ensure more coverage and deter complacency. The correct answer is C. Implement a tiered bonus system directly tied to the number of non-critical incidents responded to within a target timeframe, alongside a public recognition program for officers who consistently exceed patrol quotas. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because a security supervisor must balance the need to improve team performance with the ethical and regulatory obligations to ensure fair and effective motivation strategies. Misapplying motivation techniques can lead to decreased morale, increased turnover, and potential breaches of employment law or company policy, all of which fall under the purview of a certified security supervisor's responsibilities. The supervisor must consider the long-term impact of their decisions on the team's overall effectiveness and adherence to professional standards. The correct approach involves recognizing that while extrinsic rewards can be effective for specific tasks, a sustainable, high-performing security team relies heavily on fostering intrinsic motivation. This means empowering officers with autonomy, providing opportunities for skill development, and ensuring their work is perceived as meaningful and impactful. This aligns with general principles of good management and ethical treatment of employees, which are implicitly expected of a CSS. While specific regulations for motivation techniques are not typically codified in security law, the ethical framework of professional conduct and the implied duty of care towards subordinates necessitate approaches that respect individual dignity and promote genuine engagement. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on performance-based financial bonuses for all aspects of security work fails to acknowledge the inherent nature of security duties, which often involve vigilance, adherence to protocol, and proactive prevention rather than easily quantifiable output. This can lead to a gaming of the system, where officers prioritize easily measurable tasks over critical but less quantifiable ones, potentially compromising overall security. Furthermore, an over-reliance on extrinsic rewards can diminish intrinsic motivation, making officers less likely to go above and beyond when not directly compensated, and can create a perception of unfairness if performance metrics are not universally applicable or objectively measured. Another incorrect approach that involves public recognition for minor achievements without addressing underlying performance issues is superficial and can be demotivating. While positive reinforcement is valuable, it must be genuine and tied to meaningful contributions. Publicly highlighting small successes while ignoring systemic problems or individual struggles can create cynicism and undermine the credibility of the supervisor. This approach lacks the depth required for genuine performance improvement and can be perceived as a way to avoid addressing more complex motivational challenges. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the team's current performance, identifying specific areas for improvement. This should be followed by an assessment of both intrinsic and extrinsic motivational factors relevant to the security environment. The supervisor should then consult with their team, where appropriate, to understand their perspectives and preferences. Finally, any implemented strategy must be evaluated for its ethical implications, fairness, and potential impact on morale and long-term performance, ensuring alignment with professional standards and company policy. Question 3. When evaluating potential enhancements to a company's security posture following a recent minor incident, which approach best aligns with best practice and regulatory expectations for a certified security supervisor operating under UK regulations and CSS guidelines? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of current security policies, procedures, and incident logs, followed by a risk assessment to identify specific vulnerabilities, and then propose targeted enhancements based on this data. Option B. Immediately increase the number of visible security personnel on patrol to deter potential future incidents. Option C. Implement the cheapest available security technology upgrades that offer a perceived improvement in security. Option D. Rely on the supervisor's past experience with similar incidents to implement familiar security measures. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of current security policies, procedures, and incident logs, followed by a risk assessment to identify specific vulnerabilities, and then propose targeted enhancements based on this data. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a security supervisor to balance immediate operational needs with long-term strategic planning and regulatory compliance. The supervisor must not only address the immediate security concerns, but also ensure that any proposed solutions align with established best practices and the specific regulatory framework governing their operations, which in this case is the UK regulatory framework and CSS guidelines relevant to a certified security supervisor. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant approach from several plausible options, each with potential benefits and drawbacks. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of existing security protocols and a data-driven assessment of current threats and vulnerabilities. This method is best professional practice because it ensures that any proposed changes are informed, evidence-based, and directly address identified weaknesses. It aligns with CSS guidelines that emphasize a proactive and risk-based approach to security management, requiring supervisors to continuously evaluate and improve security measures. Furthermore, it adheres to the principle of due diligence expected under UK security regulations, which mandates that security provisions are proportionate to the identified risks and are regularly reviewed for effectiveness. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing visible security presence without a prior assessment fails to address the root causes of any security issues and may lead to inefficient resource allocation. This neglects the regulatory expectation for a risk-based approach and can be seen as a superficial response rather than a strategic solution, potentially violating the principle of proportionality in security measures. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost reduction over effectiveness by implementing less robust but cheaper security measures directly contravenes the ethical obligation to provide adequate security and may fall short of regulatory requirements for minimum security standards. This approach prioritizes financial considerations over the primary duty of ensuring safety and security, which is a fundamental ethical and regulatory failure. A further incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal experience without consulting data or established protocols demonstrates a lack of professional rigor. This can lead to subjective decision-making that may not be effective or compliant, failing to meet the standards of objective assessment and evidence-based practice expected under both CSS guidelines and UK security legislation. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a thorough risk assessment, followed by the identification of potential solutions. Each solution should then be evaluated against established best practices, regulatory requirements, and ethical considerations. This involves consulting relevant documentation, seeking expert advice where necessary, and prioritizing approaches that offer the most effective and compliant outcomes, ensuring a balance between operational needs, resource availability, and the overarching duty of care. Question 4. Quality control measures reveal a consistent pattern of minor procedural deviations among security personnel, leading to a slight increase in reported security incidents. As a certified security supervisor, CSS, you are tasked with improving team performance and adherence to protocols. Considering the ethical obligations and professional standards of a CSS, which leadership approach would be most effective in fostering long-term compliance, team motivation, and a proactive security culture? Option A. Employ a laissez-faire leadership approach, allowing team members maximum autonomy in their duties, intervening only when significant security breaches occur. Option B. Adopt a transactional leadership approach, clearly defining performance expectations and consequences, and implementing a system of rewards for strict adherence to protocols and penalties for deviations. Option C. Primarily utilize a servant leadership approach, focusing on addressing the personal needs and concerns of each team member to build trust and morale, allowing them to self-correct minor procedural issues. Option D. Implement a transformational leadership approach, focusing on inspiring the team with a shared vision of security excellence, encouraging their input on procedural improvements, and providing individual support for their professional development. The correct answer is D. Implement a transformational leadership approach, focusing on inspiring the team with a shared vision of security excellence, encouraging their input on procedural improvements, and providing individual support for their professional development. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a security supervisor to balance immediate operational needs with the long-term development and motivation of their team, all while adhering to the ethical and regulatory standards expected of a certified security supervisor, CSS. The supervisor must assess which leadership style will best foster a compliant, motivated, and effective security team within the defined regulatory framework. The correct approach involves a transformational leadership style. This style focuses on inspiring and motivating the team to achieve beyond their immediate self-interests, fostering a sense of shared purpose and commitment to the organization's security objectives and regulatory compliance. Transformational leaders encourage innovation, provide individual consideration, and intellectually stimulate their followers, which is crucial for a dynamic security environment. This aligns with the CSS's responsibility to uphold high standards of security practice and ethical conduct, promoting a culture of vigilance and continuous improvement. The ethical imperative for a CSS is to lead by example and cultivate a team that is not just compliant but proactively engaged in security. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on a transactional leadership style. While transactional leadership, which focuses on rewards and punishments for performance, can ensure adherence to basic rules, it often fails to inspire discretionary effort or foster a deep commitment to security principles beyond avoiding negative consequences. This can lead to a team that performs only the minimum required, potentially missing subtle security risks or failing to adapt to evolving threats. Ethically, this approach can be seen as a failure to adequately develop and empower the team, potentially leading to a less resilient security posture. Another incorrect approach would be to adopt a purely servant leadership style without considering the operational demands and the need for clear direction in a security context. While servant leadership prioritizes the needs of the team and fosters trust, an overemphasis on serving without also providing clear direction and accountability can lead to a lack of decisive action when required, or a diffusion of responsibility. In a security environment, clear command and control, coupled with accountability, are essential for effective incident response and operational efficiency. Ethically, while prioritizing the team is commendable, security supervisor has a primary duty to ensure the safety and security of the premises and its occupants, which may sometimes require making difficult decisions that do not solely cater to individual team member preferences. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a situational leadership assessment. This means evaluating the specific context, the team's current capabilities and motivation level, and the immediate and long-term objectives. A security supervisor should consider how different leadership theories can be integrated to achieve the best outcomes. For instance, elements of transactional leadership might be used for routine compliance, transformational leadership for driving higher performance and ethical standards, and servant leadership for team development and support, all within the overarching framework of regulatory compliance and ethical duty. The key is to adapt the leadership approach to the specific needs of the situation and the team, ensuring that the ultimate goal of effective and ethical security is met. Question 5. Analysis of a situation where a certified security supervisor, CSS, learns through a confidential source, who is also a close personal friend, about a credible imminent security threat to the facility they oversee. The friend, unaware of the full implications, has shared this information casually, believing it to be a minor issue. The CSS is now faced with the dilemma of how to act, knowing that formal reporting could potentially implicate their friend in some way, even if unintentionally. Option A. Attempt to conduct a preliminary, informal investigation on their own to gather more concrete evidence before reporting, to ensure the information is accurate and to minimize potential repercussions for the friend. Option B. Downplay the significance of the information to their direct supervisor, stating it is likely a false alarm or a misunderstanding, to avoid causing undue alarm and to protect their friend from potential scrutiny. Option C. Immediately report the credible security threat to the designated security management and relevant authorities, while also formally declaring a conflict of interest and recusing oneself from any further involvement in the investigation or mitigation of this specific threat. Option D. Discreetly inform the friend about the seriousness of the information they shared and advise them to stay away from the facility during the suspected timeframe of the threat, without formally reporting the threat to management. Correct answer is C. Immediately report the credible security threat to the designated security management and relevant authorities, while also formally declaring a conflict of interest and recusing oneself from any further involvement in the investigation or mitigation of this specific threat. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the conflict between personal relationships and professional duty, specifically concerning the Certified Security Supervisors, CSS, Code of Conduct and Ethical Decision-Making. The supervisor is privy to sensitive information about a potential security breach that directly impacts a close friend. Maintaining integrity and upholding the code of conduct are paramount, requiring the supervisor to prioritize their professional responsibilities over personal loyalties. The correct approach involves immediate and transparent reporting of the information to the appropriate channels within the organization, while recusing oneself from any further involvement due to the conflict of interest. This aligns with the core principles of integrity and ethical conduct expected of a CSS. Specifically, the CSS Code of Conduct, assuming a standard framework for such certifications, typically mandates reporting of security threats and prohibits actions that could compromise operational security or create conflicts of interest. By reporting and recusing, the supervisor demonstrates unwavering integrity, upholds their professional duty to protect the organization, and avoids any appearance of impropriety or bias. This proactive and transparent action safeguards the organization's assets and reputation, while also protecting the supervisor's professional standing. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the information due to the friendship. This failure directly violates the duty to report security threats and demonstrates a lack of integrity. It prioritizes personal comfort over professional responsibility, potentially leading to a significant security incident that could have been prevented. Such inaction erodes trust and undermines the very purpose of the CSS role. Another incorrect approach would be to subtly warn the friend without formally reporting the breach. While seemingly an attempt to mitigate harm to the friend, this action still constitutes a breach of the code of conduct. It involves disclosing sensitive, non-public information without authorization and creates a direct conflict of interest. This approach compromises the integrity of the reporting process and could lead to the friend taking actions that further jeopardize the security of the organization or themselves, making the supervisor complicit in a cover-up. A third incorrect approach would be to attempt to investigate the potential breach independently without informing superiors. This bypasses established protocols, potentially mishandling critical information and creating further security risks. It demonstrates a lack of respect for organizational hierarchy and established procedures, and a failure to act with integrity by operating outside of authorized channels. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear assessment of the situation against the established code of conduct and ethical guidelines. Professionals should ask themselves, does this situation create a conflict of interest? What are my reporting obligations? What are the potential consequences of my actions or inactions for the organization and for myself? Prioritizing transparency, adherence to protocols, and the organization's best interests, even when personally difficult, is the hallmark of ethical professional conduct. Question 6. The performance metrics show a recent increase in attempted phishing attacks targeting employees, alongside a reported rise in sophisticated ransomware threats against similar financial institutions in the region. As a certified security supervisor for a UK-based investment firm, which approach best aligns with regulatory compliance and effective threat assessment? Option A. Conduct a detailed historical analysis of all past security incidents over the last 5 years to identify the most frequent types of attacks, and then allocate resources based on this historical frequency alone. Option B. Focus all available resources on developing a comprehensive counter-ransomware strategy, as this represents the most severe potential impact, and defer further action on phishing until ransomware risks are fully mitigated. Option C. Prioritize immediate deployment of enhanced email filtering and employee awareness training, specifically addressing phishing, while simultaneously initiating a review of the firm's ransomware defenses and incident response plan. Option D. Implement a broad, multi-layered security upgrade across all systems, assuming that a general increase in security will address both phishing and ransomware threats without specific analysis. The correct answer is C. Prioritize immediate deployment of enhanced email filtering and employee awareness training, specifically addressing phishing, while simultaneously initiating a review of the firm's ransomware defenses and incident response plan. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a security supervisor to move beyond simply identifying potential threats to actively assessing their likelihood and potential impact within the specific operational context of a financial institution regulated under UK financial services law and CSI guidelines. The supervisor must balance the need for robust security with operational efficiency and resource allocation, all while adhering to regulatory expectations for risk management. Careful judgment is required to avoid both underestimating risks, which could lead to breaches, and overestimating them, which could result in unnecessary expenditure and operational disruption. Correct approach involves a systematic evaluation of identified threats, considering factors such as the sophistication of potential adversaries, the vulnerability of assets, and the potential consequences of a successful attack. This aligns with the principles of risk management expected by UK regulators, e.g., the Financial Conduct Authority (FCA), and the professional standards set by CSS, which emphasize a proactive and proportionate approach to security. Specifically, regulatory frameworks often mandate that firms conduct regular risk assessments to identify, evaluate, and treat risks to their business, including security threats. This approach ensures that security measures are targeted and effective, providing the greatest protection for the most significant risks. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the frequency of past incidents, without considering the evolving threat landscape or the potential impact of new attack vectors, would be professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet the regulatory expectation of forward-looking risk assessment and could leave the institution vulnerable to novel threats. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the most sensational or high-profile threats, regardless of their actual likelihood or relevance to the institution's specific operations, is also flawed. This can lead to misallocation of resources and a failure to address more probable, albeit less dramatic, risks. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or gut feeling without a structured analytical framework would be professionally unsound, as it lacks the objectivity and defensibility required by regulatory bodies and professional standards. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive threat identification process, followed by a structured analysis of likelihood and impact. This analysis should be informed by intelligence, vulnerability assessments, and an understanding of the business's critical assets and functions. The outcomes of this assessment should then guide the development and implementation of proportionate control measures, with regular review and updates to account for changes in the threat environment and business operations. This systematic process ensures that security investments are aligned with identified risks and regulatory requirements. Question 7. Compliance review shows that a security supervisor is considering how to best manage their team to ensure adherence to all security protocols and regulatory requirements. The team consists of individuals with varying levels of experience and motivation. The supervisor is weighing different approaches to leadership. Which management style is most likely to foster a culture of compliance and sustained operational effectiveness while respecting the team's contributions? Option A, autocratic. Option B, bureaucratic. Option C, democratic. Option D, laissez-faire. The correct answer is C, democratic. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security supervision, balancing operational efficiency with team morale and adherence to established protocols. The supervisor must navigate the diverse needs and expectations of their team members while ensuring that security operations meet the required standards. The challenge lies in selecting a management style that fosters a productive and compliant work environment without alienating staff or compromising security objectives. Careful judgment is required to understand the implications of each management style on team performance, adherence to regulations, and overall security effectiveness. The democratic management style is the correct approach in this situation. This style involves consulting with team members, valuing their input, and making decisions collaboratively. This fosters a sense of ownership and engagement among security personnel, leading to higher morale and a greater commitment to following procedures. Ethically, it aligns with principles of fairness and respect for individuals. From a regulatory perspective, a democratic approach can encourage proactive identification of compliance issues by the team, as they feel empowered to voice concerns and suggest improvements. This aligns with the spirit of many security regulations that emphasize a culture of compliance and continuous improvement. An autocratic management style, which involves making decisions unilaterally without consulting the team, is incorrect. While it may appear efficient in the short term, it can lead to resentment, decreased motivation, and a reluctance to take initiative among security staff. This can result in a superficial adherence to rules, with team members only complying when directly supervised, increasing the risk of compliance breaches. Ethically, it can be perceived as disrespectful and demeaning. Regulatory failures would stem from a lack of genuine buy-in to compliance procedures, potentially leading to overlooked violations. A laissez-faire management style, characterized by minimal supervision and a hands-off approach, is also incorrect. While it might empower highly experienced and self-motivated individuals, it can lead to a lack of direction, inconsistent application of security protocols, and a decline in overall team performance. This can create significant compliance risks as standards may not be consistently met. Ethically, it can be seen as a dereliction of duty by the supervisor, failing to provide necessary guidance and oversight. Regulatory failures are highly probable due to the absence of clear direction and accountability, increasing the likelihood of noncompliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves first assessing the team's experience level, the complexity of the security operations, and the specific regulatory requirements. A supervisor should then consider which management style will best promote adherence to these regulations, foster a positive team dynamic, and ensure operational effectiveness. Open communication, active listening, and a willingness to adapt the management approach based on team feedback are crucial for making sound professional judgments. Question 8. Research into the security posture of a retail organization has identified several potential threats, including insider data theft and external ransomware attacks. The security supervisor is tasked with assessing the potential impact of these threats. Which of the following approaches best supports a comprehensive and compliant risk assessment? Option A. Relying on the subjective judgment of senior management regarding which threats are most concerning, without detailed analysis. Option B. Focusing primarily on the probability of each threat occurring, as high-probability threats are inherently more impactful. Option C. Prioritizing threats based on media sensationalism and recent high-profile security breaches, regardless of specific organizational context. Option D. Quantifying the potential financial losses, reputational damage, and operational disruptions that could result from each identified threat exploiting a vulnerability. Correct answer is D. Quantifying the potential financial losses, reputational damage, and operational disruptions that could result from each identified threat exploiting a vulnerability. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a security supervisor to move beyond simply identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities to quantifying their potential impact on the organization. This involves a nuanced understanding of business operations and the cascading effects of security incidents. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the assessment is realistic, actionable, and aligned with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves systematically evaluating the potential consequences of identified threats exploiting vulnerabilities across various organizational domains, such as financial loss, reputational damage, operational disruption, and legal/regulatory noncompliance. This aligns with the principles of effective risk management mandated by regulatory frameworks that require organizations to understand and mitigate risks to their operations and stakeholders. For instance, in the UK, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, necessitates data protection impact assessments, DPIA, which inherently involve impact assessment to understand the risks to individuals' data. Similarly, the UK's Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974 requires employers to assess risks to employee health and safety, which includes understanding the potential impact of incidents. A robust impact assessment provides the foundation for prioritizing mitigation efforts and allocating resources effectively, ensuring that the most critical risks are addressed first. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the likelihood of a threat occurring, without considering the severity of its consequences, fails to meet regulatory expectations for comprehensive risk management. For example, a low-likelihood, high-impact event might be overlooked if only likelihood is considered, leading to potential significant harm that could have been prevented. This would be a failure to adequately discharge duties under relevant legislation that requires proactive risk mitigation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only the most obvious or sensational threats, neglecting less apparent but potentially devastating impacts, demonstrates a lack of thoroughness. This can lead to a skewed understanding of the risk landscape and misallocation of resources. It also fails to consider the interconnectedness of systems and operations, where a seemingly minor incident could trigger a chain reaction with severe consequences. A further incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal intuition rather than structured analysis risks subjective bias and incomplete risk coverage. This can lead to overlooking critical vulnerabilities or overestimating others, resulting in an ineffective security strategy that does not meet the organization's duty of care or regulatory compliance requirements. Professional decision-making in such situations should involve a structured, evidence-based process that considers all relevant factors, aligns with established risk management methodologies, and adheres to the specific legal and ethical obligations of the jurisdiction. Question 9. The efficiency study reveals that the current access control system for the research and development wing is experiencing delays in granting access to authorized personnel, impacting productivity. As the certified security supervisor, which of the following actions would be the most appropriate and compliant response, considering the regulatory framework for access control systems, physical barriers, electronic access control, and key management? Option A. Propose a temporary suspension of access to certain less critical areas within the wing until a full system overhaul can be completed. Option B. Implement stricter key control policies, requiring multiple levels of authorization for all key requests without re-evaluating the physical or electronic access points. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the existing physical barriers, electronic access control logs, and key issuance and return procedures to identify the specific bottlenecks causing the delays, and then propose targeted improvements. Option D. Immediately upgrade the entire electronic access control system to a newer model, assuming that technological obsolescence is the primary cause of the delays. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the existing physical barriers, electronic access control logs, and key issuance and return procedures to identify the specific bottlenecks causing the delays, and then propose targeted improvements. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security management, balancing operational efficiency with robust security protocols, specifically concerning access control systems and key management. The professional challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method to address a potential security vulnerability without unduly disrupting legitimate access or incurring excessive costs. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solution aligns with the Certified Security Supervisor (CSS) regulatory framework, which emphasizes the importance of secure physical barriers, effective electronic access control, and stringent key management practices to prevent unauthorized access and maintain the integrity of sensitive areas. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the existing access control system, including physical barriers and electronic controls, coupled with a thorough audit of key management procedures. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the identified inefficiencies while systematically evaluating potential security risks. It prioritizes a data-driven assessment to inform decisions, ensuring that any changes are both effective and compliant with CSS standards for access control and key management. This aligns with the regulatory expectation that security supervisors maintain a proactive and systematic approach to identifying and mitigating vulnerabilities, ensuring that physical and electronic security measures are integrated and managed effectively. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement a costly upgrade to the electronic access control system, without first assessing the effectiveness of current physical barriers or the integrity of key management. This is incorrect because it bypasses a crucial diagnostic step, potentially leading to an unnecessary expenditure and failing to address the root cause of the inefficiency, which might lie in procedural weaknesses rather than technological limitations. Such an approach risks noncompliance with the CSS framework's emphasis on a holistic and cost-effective security strategy. Another incorrect approach would be to solely focus on tightening key issuance policies without re-evaluating the physical and electronic access controls. This is incorrect as it addresses only one facet of access control and may not adequately compensate for weaknesses in the other areas. The CSS framework requires a layered security approach, and neglecting physical or electronic controls while focusing on key management creates a significant security gap and potential noncompliance. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a blanket restriction on access to certain areas based on the efficiency study's findings, without a proper risk assessment or consideration for operational needs. This is incorrect because it can lead to operational disruptions and may not be a proportionate response to the identified inefficiencies. Security measures must be risk-based and aligned with business objectives, as mandated by professional security standards. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify the problem and its scope. 2. Gather relevant data and conduct a thorough assessment of all components of the access control system, physical barriers, electronic controls, key management. 3. Evaluate potential solutions against regulatory requirements, operational needs, and cost-effectiveness. 4. Prioritize solutions that offer the most comprehensive and compliant mitigation of risks. 5. Implement the chosen solution with appropriate planning and communication. 6. Monitor and review the effectiveness of the implemented solution. Question 10. Comparative studies suggest that effective security teams progress through distinct developmental stages. A newly formed security team, initially enthusiastic, is now experiencing increased friction, with members openly questioning each other's methods and expressing differing opinions on operational procedures. Which approach best aligns with the Certified Security Supervisor's (CSS) role in guiding this team through its current developmental phase? Option A. Ignore the emerging conflicts, assuming they will resolve naturally as the team gains more experience. Option B. Facilitate open dialogue to address underlying concerns, clarify roles, and establish agreed-upon operational norms. Option C. Conduct individual performance reviews to identify and address the root causes of dissatisfaction. Option D. Implement stricter hierarchical controls and issue direct orders to quell dissent and ensure immediate compliance. The correct answer is B. Facilitate open dialogue to address underlying concerns, clarify roles, and establish agreed-upon operational norms. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because a certified security supervisor, CSS, must balance the immediate need for operational effectiveness with the long-term health and productivity of their team. Mismanaging team dynamics can lead to decreased morale, increased errors, and potential breaches of security protocols, all of which have significant regulatory and ethical implications under the framework governing CSS professionals. The supervisor's role is to guide the team through the natural stages of development to achieve peak performance while upholding professional standards. The correct approach involves recognizing the team's current stage of development and implementing strategies that are appropriate for that stage. For a team exhibiting signs of conflict and differing opinions, which is characteristic of the storming phase, the supervisor should facilitate open communication, encourage constructive debate, and help establish clear roles and expectations. This proactive management of conflict, rather than suppression or avoidance, aligns with the ethical duty of a CSS to foster a secure and efficient working environment. It also implicitly supports regulatory compliance by ensuring that team members understand their responsibilities and work collaboratively, reducing the likelihood of security lapses due to interpersonal friction. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the emerging conflicts, hoping they resolve themselves. This failure to address the storming phase directly can lead to entrenched disagreements, reduced collaboration, and a decline in operational effectiveness, potentially violating the CSS's responsibility to maintain a functional security operation. Another incorrect approach is to impose strict, top-down directives without allowing for team input or discussion. While seemingly efficient, this can stifle creativity, breed resentment, and prevent the team from moving through the norming and performing stages organically, thereby undermining the long-term goal of a cohesive and high-performing unit. Furthermore, resorting to punitive measures for disagreements that are part of the storming phase would be ethically unsound and counterproductive, as it would discourage open communication and team development. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with accurate assessment of the team's current developmental stage. This requires active observation and listening. Once identified, the supervisor should select interventions that are stage-appropriate, drawing on established team development models. This involves understanding the underlying dynamics of each stage and applying leadership techniques that facilitate progression. Ethical considerations, such as fairness, respect, and the duty to maintain operational integrity, must guide every decision. Regulatory compliance is achieved by ensuring that team management practices support the overall security objectives and do not create vulnerabilities. Question 11. Process analysis reveals a significant, unexpected disruption has occurred, impacting the physical security of a key operational facility and threatening the continuity of essential business services. As the Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and operational resilience? Option A. Focus solely on securing the immediate perimeter of the facility to prevent further unauthorized access, deferring any operational continuity considerations until the situation is fully contained. Option B. Attempt to restore all affected business services to normal operation as quickly as possible, regardless of their criticality, to minimize immediate customer impact. Option C. Immediately activate the predefined business continuity plans for the affected facility and initiate a systematic assessment of the disruption's impact on critical business functions. Option D. Await detailed instructions from senior management regarding the specific steps to take, even if the disruption is clearly escalating and impacting core operations. The correct answer is C. Immediately activate the predefined business continuity plans for the affected facility and initiate a systematic assessment of the disruption's impact on critical business functions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a security supervisor to balance operational continuity with regulatory compliance during a significant disruption. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific requirements of the Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, regulatory framework to a dynamic and potentially chaotic situation. A failure to correctly prioritize and implement business continuity measures can lead to severe operational, financial, and reputational damage, as well as regulatory penalties. The supervisor must make swift, informed decisions under pressure, ensuring that the chosen approach aligns with the established legal and ethical standards governing security operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves prioritizing the immediate activation of predefined business continuity plans that focus on safeguarding critical assets and personnel, followed by a systematic assessment of the disruption's impact on core business functions. This approach is right because it directly addresses the CSS regulatory framework's emphasis on proactive risk management and operational resilience. By activating established plans, the supervisor ensures that immediate actions are taken in accordance with documented procedures, minimizing ad hoc decision-making that could lead to errors or non-compliance. The subsequent systematic assessment allows for a controlled and compliant response, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively and that all actions are justifiable under the regulatory guidelines. This aligns with the ethical duty of care to protect the organization and its stakeholders during a crisis. Incorrect approach is analysis. Focusing solely on immediate damage control without referencing or activating established business continuity plans is an incorrect approach. This failure stems from neglecting the proactive planning mandated by regulatory frameworks. Such an approach risks overlooking critical operational dependencies and may lead to actions that are not aligned with the organization's overall resilience strategy, potentially violating compliance requirements. Prioritizing the restoration of non-essential services before critical ones is also an incorrect approach. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of business continuity principles, which dictate that essential functions must be maintained or restored first to minimize overall impact. This deviation from best practice and likely regulatory expectations can lead to prolonged disruption of core services, increasing the risk of significant financial loss and reputational damage, and failing to meet the spirit of operational resilience. Waiting for explicit instructions from senior management before initiating any business continuity measures, even when a disruption is clearly impacting operations, is an incorrect approach. While communication is vital, a security supervisor has a responsibility to act within the scope of their authority and pre-approved plans when a crisis unfolds. This passive approach can lead to critical delays, exacerbating the disruption and potentially violating the supervisor's duty to act prudently and in accordance with established protocols, which are designed to empower timely action. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's established business continuity plans and the relevant regulatory requirements. Upon detection of a significant disruption, the immediate step should be to activate these predefined plans. This is followed by a rapid, yet thorough, assessment of the disruption's impact on critical business functions and assets. Throughout the process, Clear communication with relevant stakeholders and adherence to documented procedures are paramount. This structured approach ensures that actions are compliant, effective, and ethically sound, prioritizing the organization's resilience and the safety of its personnel. Question 12. Regulatory review indicates that a client wishes to implement a new video surveillance system with advanced facial recognition capabilities to enhance security at a public-facing facility. As a certified security supervisor, CSS, what is the most appropriate initial step to ensure compliance with the relevant regulatory framework governing the use of such technologies? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the proposed system's data handling, privacy implications, and operational procedures against the specific regulatory requirements of the jurisdiction, including data protection laws and surveillance guidelines. Option B. Obtain client approval for the system based on its advanced features, and then seek legal counsel regarding potential compliance issues after deployment. Option C. Proceed with the installation of the system after confirming its technical specifications and operational benefits meet the client's stated security objectives. Option D. Rely on the vendor's documentation and assurances that the technology complies with all applicable privacy and security standards without further independent verification. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the installation of the system after confirming its technical specifications and operational benefits meet the client's stated security objectives. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, to balance the operational needs of a client with the strict adherence to regulatory requirements concerning the deployment of new security technology. The supervisor must not only understand the technical capabilities of the proposed system, but also its legal and ethical implications within the specified jurisdiction. The pressure to implement a solution quickly, potentially driven by client demands or perceived threats, can lead to shortcuts that violate compliance. The challenge lies in navigating these pressures while upholding the integrity of the security program and ensuring it aligns with all applicable laws and guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of the proposed security technology against the specific regulatory framework of the Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, exam jurisdiction. This includes verifying that the technology's data collection, storage, and usage practices comply with privacy laws, such as those governing surveillance and personal information. It also requires confirming that the technology's implementation plan includes adequate training for personnel, clear operational procedures, and a robust incident response strategy, all of which are often mandated or strongly recommended by regulatory bodies. This thorough due diligence ensures that the technology is not only effective but also legally sound and ethically deployed, thereby mitigating risks of non-compliance, legal challenges, and reputational damage. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the technology based solely on its perceived effectiveness or client preference, without a thorough regulatory review, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This approach disregards the legal obligations to protect individuals' privacy and data, potentially leading to severe penalties and legal action. Deploying the technology after a cursory review that focuses only on technical specifications and operational benefits, while overlooking data privacy and security protocols, is also problematic. This oversight can result in non-compliance with data protection regulations, even if the technology itself is not inherently flawed. Relying on vendor assurances alone without independent verification against the specific regulatory requirements of the jurisdiction is a critical error. Vendors may not be fully aware of or compliant with all local regulations, and the responsibility for compliance ultimately rests with the deploying organization and its supervisor. This can lead to the adoption of technology that, while functional, operates outside legal boundaries. Professional reasoning. Certified security supervisors must adopt a risk-based, compliance-first approach when evaluating and implementing new security technologies. The decision-making process should begin with a clear understanding of the relevant regulatory landscape. This involves proactively identifying all applicable laws, regulations, and industry best practices. Before any technology is procured or deployed, a detailed assessment must be conducted to ensure it meets all compliance criteria, particularly concerning data privacy, security, and operational integrity. If any aspect of the technology or its proposed implementation raises compliance concerns, These must be addressed through consultation with legal counsel or compliance officers, or by seeking alternative solutions. Continuous monitoring and periodic reviews of deployed technologies are also essential to maintain ongoing compliance. Question 13. Consider a scenario where a client of a private security firm, operating under UK regulations, requests access to CCTV footage from a specific date and time to identify an individual they believe was involved in a minor dispute on the client's premises. The client asserts that this is for their personal records and to resolve a personal matter. As the Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, responsible for overseeing operations, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with the legal and regulatory frameworks impacting security operations? Option A. Immediately provide the client with the requested CCTV footage, as they are the client and the request pertains to their property. Option B. Advise the client to conduct their own investigation on the premises, as the security firm is only responsible for physical security and not for providing evidence for personal disputes. Option C. Inform the client that access to CCTV footage is subject to strict data protection laws, including the Data Protection Act 2018 and UK GDPR, and that a formal process involving a documented lawful basis for processing and data subject rights assessment must be followed before any footage can be disclosed. Option D. Offer to provide a summary of events from the CCTV footage without showing the actual footage, to avoid any potential data protection issues. The correct answer is A. Immediately provide the client with the requested CCTV footage, as they are the client and the request pertains to their property. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, to navigate a complex legal and regulatory landscape while balancing the immediate needs of a client with their overarching professional and legal obligations. The supervisor must demonstrate a thorough understanding of the specific laws governing security operations within the designated jurisdiction, ensuring that all actions taken are compliant and ethically sound. The pressure to satisfy a client's request, especially one that might seem minor or straightforward, can lead to overlooking critical legal nuances. Correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to the relevant legal and regulatory framework, specifically the data protection laws applicable in the UK, such as the Data Protection Act 2018 and the UK GDPR. This approach is correct because it upholds the legal duty of care and the principles of lawful data processing. The supervisor must ensure that any access to or disclosure of personal data is justified by a lawful basis, such as consent, contractual necessity, or legal obligation, and that appropriate security measures are in place to protect that data. This demonstrates a commitment to professional integrity and compliance, safeguarding both the client and the individuals whose data might be involved. An incorrect approach would be to immediately grant the client's request without a thorough review of the legal implications. This failure to assess the regulatory framework could lead to a breach of data protection laws, resulting in significant fines, reputational damage, and potential legal action. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that because the client is paying for the service, they have an automatic right to access any information they request, regardless of its nature or the privacy rights of others. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of the supervisor's legal responsibilities and the limitations placed upon them by data protection legislation. Finally, an approach that involves attempting to find a workaround or a less formal method to satisfy the client's request without proper legal justification would also be incorrect, as it undermines the integrity of the regulatory framework and exposes the organization to risk. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core request and then systematically assessing it against all applicable legal and regulatory requirements. This involves consulting relevant legislation, internal policies, and, if necessary, seeking legal counsel. The supervisor must then evaluate the potential risks and benefits of each course of action, always prioritizing compliance and ethical conduct. Transparency with the client about the legal constraints and the reasoning behind any decisions is also crucial for maintaining professional relationships. Question 14. Operational review demonstrates that the security team has visually confirmed the operational status of all intrusion detection, fire alarm, and duress alarm panels by observing their green status lights. What is the most compliant and professionally sound approach for the Certified Security Supervisor to ensure the integrity and effectiveness of these critical alarm systems in accordance with UK regulatory framework and CSS guidelines. Option A. Assume all alarm systems are functioning optimally due to the lack of any reported security incidents in the past quarter and focus resources on other operational areas. Option B. Immediately initiate repairs for any minor fault identified on any panel, without creating detailed documentation of the issue or the corrective action taken, to ensure systems are perceived as fully functional. Option C. Rely solely on the visual confirmation of green status lights on all alarm panels as sufficient evidence of their operational integrity. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of all alarm system maintenance logs, testing records, and response protocols, cross-referencing them with the documented security policies and relevant SIA/ACS standards and CSS guidelines to verify ongoing compliance and system readiness. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of all alarm system maintenance logs, testing records, and response protocols, cross-referencing them with the documented security policies and relevant SIA/ACS standards and CSS guidelines to verify ongoing compliance and system readiness. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a certified security supervisor, CSS, to balance immediate operational needs with strict adherence to regulatory compliance concerning alarm systems. The supervisor must not only ensure the systems are functional, but also that their deployment and management align with the specific requirements of the relevant regulatory framework, which in this case is assumed to be the UK regulatory framework and CSS guidelines for financial services security. Failure to do so can lead to significant security breaches, financial penalties, and reputational damage. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of all alarm system logs and maintenance records against the documented security policies and the relevant sections of the UK's Private Security Industry Act 2001, the Security Industry Authority, approved Contractor Scheme Acts, standards, and relevant CSS guidelines pertaining to operational resilience and security for financial institutions. This ensures that intrusion detection, fire alarms, and duress alarms are not only operational, but also configured, monitored, and maintained according to established best practices and legal obligations, including appropriate response protocols and regular testing. This systematic verification is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and compliance. An incorrect approach of solely relying on the visual confirmation of system status lights on the alarm panels is professionally unacceptable. This method fails to account for potential underlying system faults that may not be immediately apparent from a status light, such as communication failures, sensor malfunctions, or incorrect configuration settings. It bypasses the requirement for documented testing and maintenance logs mandated by the SIA/ACS standards and UK legislation, which require evidence of proactive system integrity checks. Furthermore, it neglects the specific response protocols for different alarm types, intrusion, fire, duress, as outlined in security policies and potentially CSS guidelines, which may require immediate verification and specific actions beyond a simple visual check. Another incorrect approach of prioritizing the immediate repair of any minor fault without documenting the issue and the corrective action is also professionally unsound. A prompt repair is desirable. The absence of proper documentation means there is no auditable trail of system maintenance and performance. This directly contravenes the record-keeping requirements of the SIA/ACS and the need for a robust audit trail in regulated environments like financial services, as often emphasized by CSS. Without documentation, it is impossible to demonstrate compliance with maintenance schedules or to identify recurring issues that might indicate a systemic problem. Finally, an incorrect approach of assuming all alarm systems are functioning correctly because no recent incidents have been reported is a dangerous oversight. The absence of reported incidents does not equate to system reliability. It overlooks the critical need for proactive testing and preventative maintenance to ensure systems are ready to function when an actual event occurs. Regulatory frameworks, including SIA standards and CSS guidelines on operational resilience, mandate regular testing and validation of security systems, irrespective of incident history, to mitigate risks and ensure effective response capabilities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, understand the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the jurisdiction and industry. Second, develop and implement clear policies and procedures for the installation, maintenance, testing, and monitoring of all alarm systems. Third, ensure comprehensive and accurate record-keeping for all activities related to alarm systems. Fourth, conduct regular audits and reviews to verify compliance and identify areas for improvement. Finally, prioritize training for security personnel on alarm system operation, response protocols, and reporting procedures. Question 15. The investigation demonstrates that a retail establishment's CCTV system, equipped with video analytics for loss prevention, is being remotely monitored by a third-party security firm. The contract with the firm allows them access to live feeds and recorded footage for an indefinite period. The retail management has not established specific data retention periods for the footage, nor have they clearly defined the precise purposes for which the video analytics are being used beyond general loss prevention. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance for surveillance systems in this context? Option A. Request the third-party firm to implement their own data retention policies and access controls, assuming their internal procedures are adequate for regulatory compliance. Option B. Immediately cease all remote monitoring by the third-party firm until clear data retention policies, specific purpose definitions for video analytics, and robust access controls are documented and implemented, ensuring compliance with data protection principles. Option C. Continue the current remote monitoring arrangement, as the contract is legally binding and the general purpose of loss prevention is sufficient justification for data collection. Option D. Inform the third-party firm that they can only monitor live feeds and must delete all recorded footage immediately after each shift, without establishing formal retention policies. The correct answer is B. Immediately cease all remote monitoring by the third-party firm until clear data retention policies, specific purpose definitions for video analytics, and robust access controls are documented and implemented, ensuring compliance with data protection principles. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common challenge in security operations, balancing the need for effective surveillance with the imperative to comply with data protection regulations. Specifically, the scenario highlights the critical importance of lawful data processing and the potential for misuse or unauthorized access to sensitive video footage. A certified security supervisor, CSS, must navigate these complexities by adhering strictly to the relevant legal framework governing CCTV and data handling. The correct approach involves ensuring that all CCTV operations, including the storage and remote monitoring of footage, are conducted in accordance with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and lawful basis for processing, as mandated by the relevant data protection legislation. This includes having clear policies on data retention, access controls, and the specific purposes for which the data is collected and monitored. Remote monitoring must be authorized, secured, and only accessible by designated personnel for legitimate security purposes. An incorrect approach that involves indiscriminate remote monitoring of all CCTV feeds without a clear, documented purpose or adequate security protocols would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to breaches of privacy, unauthorized surveillance, and potential misuse of personal data, violating principles of data protection by design and by default. Another incorrect approach, such as retaining footage indefinitely or sharing it with unauthorized third parties without a legal basis, would also constitute a serious breach of data protection laws and ethical standards, undermining public trust and potentially leading to legal repercussions. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory framework, a commitment to ethical conduct, and the implementation of robust internal policies and procedures. A supervisor must proactively assess risks, ensure staff are adequately trained on data protection obligations, and regularly review surveillance practices to maintain compliance and uphold privacy rights. This involves a continuous cycle of assessment, implementation, and review to ensure that surveillance systems are used responsibly and legally. Question 16. The analysis reveals that a data breach has a moderate probability of occurring, but a catastrophic impact on the organization's reputation and financial stability. Conversely, a minor equipment malfunction has a high probability of occurring, but a negligible impact on operations. Which approach to risk evaluation and prioritization is most aligned with effective security supervision? Option A. Prioritize the equipment malfunction risk due to its high probability and the potential for cumulative minor disruptions. Option B. Prioritize the equipment malfunction risk because it has a high probability of occurring. Option C. Prioritize the data breach risk due to its catastrophic impact, even though its probability is only moderate. Option D. Prioritize the data breach risk because it has a moderate probability of occurring. The correct answer is C. Prioritize the data breach risk due to its catastrophic impact, even though its probability is only moderate. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a security supervisor to move beyond a simple identification of risks to a nuanced evaluation of their potential severity. The supervisor must consider both the likelihood of a risk occurring and the magnitude of its consequences, a core principle of effective risk management. This demands careful judgment to prioritize resources and mitigation efforts appropriately, ensuring that the most significant threats are addressed first. The correct approach involves prioritizing risks based on a combination of their probability and impact. This aligns with the fundamental principles of risk management, as outlined in industry best practices, and implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate proportionate security measures. By focusing on risks with high probability and high impact, the supervisor ensures that the most critical vulnerabilities are addressed with the most robust controls, thereby optimizing the use of security resources and maximizing the protection of assets and personnel. This systematic evaluation is essential for demonstrating due diligence and accountability in security operations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the probability of a risk occurring, without considering its potential impact, fails to adequately address significant threats. A low probability event, if it has a catastrophic impact, could still pose an unacceptable risk. Conversely, an approach that prioritizes risks based only on their potential impact, without considering their likelihood, might lead to overallocation of resources to highly improbable events, while neglecting more frequent, albeit less severe, threats that could cumulatively cause significant disruption. Another incorrect approach, which might involve a subjective or arbitrary ranking of risks without a defined methodology, lacks the rigor required for effective risk management and can lead to inconsistent and potentially ineffective security strategies. Such an approach fails to provide a defensible basis for security decisions and may not meet the implicit expectations of regulatory oversight for a structured and evidence-based approach to security. Professionals should employ a structured risk assessment methodology that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates risks. This involves defining clear criteria for assessing probability and impact, using a consistent framework for scoring and prioritizing risks, and documenting the entire process. When faced with such a scenario, the decision-making process should involve consulting relevant security policies, industry standards, and any applicable regulatory guidance to ensure the chosen risk assessment methodology is appropriate and defensible. The outcome of the assessment should then inform the development and implementation of a proportionate security strategy. Question 17. Benchmark analysis indicates that a recent cybersecurity awareness training program was completed by 95% of staff. To assess the program's effectiveness in mitigating basic cybersecurity threats and promoting best practices, which of the following evaluation approaches would be most appropriate for a certified security supervisor? Option A. Consider the training effective based on the high completion rate, assuming that attendance implies understanding. Option B. Assess the training's effectiveness by evaluating its ability to foster proactive threat identification and adherence to established incident reporting protocols. Option C. Focus on how quickly employees finish the online modules, as this indicates efficient engagement with the material. Option D. Rely on informal feedback from a few employees who mentioned they found the training interesting to gauge overall comprehension. The correct answer is B. Assess the training's effectiveness by evaluating its ability to foster proactive threat identification and adherence to established incident reporting protocols. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a security supervisor to evaluate the effectiveness of cybersecurity awareness training against a backdrop of evolving threats and regulatory expectations. The supervisor must not only understand basic threats, but also critically assess how well the training equips personnel to identify and respond to them, ensuring compliance with relevant standards. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between superficial understanding and genuine preparedness. The correct approach is to evaluate the training's effectiveness by assessing its ability to foster proactive threat identification and adherence to established incident reporting protocols. This aligns with the core principles of cybersecurity awareness, which aim to create a human firewall. Specifically, it reflects the spirit of regulations that mandate robust security practices and employee training to mitigate risks. Ethical considerations also demand that employees are adequately prepared to protect sensitive information and organizational assets. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the completion rate of the training module fails to measure actual comprehension or behavioral change. This is a regulatory failure because it does not demonstrate that the training has achieved its intended purpose of enhancing security posture, which is often a requirement for compliance. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to adequately prepare staff. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence of employees reporting minor issues overlooks the importance of systematic evaluation and the potential for underreporting. This is a regulatory failure, as it bypasses established metrics for assessing training effectiveness and may not capture the full scope of potential vulnerabilities. Ethically, it risks creating a false sense of security. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes the speed of training completion over the depth of understanding neglects the fundamental goal of cybersecurity awareness. This is a regulatory failure because it suggests a compliance-driven, rather than a risk mitigation-driven, approach to training, which may not satisfy due diligence requirements. Ethically, it prioritizes efficiency over the critical need for robust security knowledge. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements for cybersecurity awareness training. 2. Identifying key cybersecurity threats relevant to the organization's context. 3. Defining measurable objectives for the training program. 4. Selecting evaluation methods that assess comprehension, retention, and application of learned principles. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating training content and evaluation methods based on threat intelligence and performance data. Question 18. To address the challenge of ensuring performance reviews are fair, objective, and contribute to employee development within the regulatory framework of the Certified Security Supervisor (CSS) exam, which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory expectations? Option A. Avoiding any direct discussion of performance deficiencies during the year, only addressing significant issues during the annual review in a way that focuses on disciplinary action rather than developmental opportunities. Option B. Setting broad, aspirational goals at the beginning of the year and then waiting until the annual review to discuss performance, offering general praise or criticism without specific examples or data. Option C. Implementing a continuous performance management cycle that includes collaboratively setting SMART goals, providing regular informal feedback and formal check-ins throughout the review period, and conducting a comprehensive review based on documented progress against these goals. Option D. Conducting a single, annual performance review that focuses primarily on the employee's output from the past year, with minimal prior communication about specific performance expectations or areas for improvement. The correct answer is C. Implementing a continuous performance management cycle that includes collaboratively setting SMART goals, providing regular informal feedback and formal check-ins throughout the review period, and conducting a comprehensive review based on documented progress against these goals. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in performance management, ensuring that performance reviews are not only conducted, but also genuinely contribute to employee development and organizational effectiveness, while adhering to the specific regulatory framework for the Certified Security Supervisor (CSS) exam. The challenge lies in moving beyond a perfunctory, box-ticking exercise to a process that is fair, objective, and legally compliant. A key aspect is the supervisor's responsibility to set clear, measurable goals and provide constructive, actionable feedback, which is fundamental to both employee motivation and the supervisor's duty of care. The regulatory framework for CSS examinations emphasizes the importance of documented performance, fair appraisal, and adherence to established organizational policies, which are often underpinned by broader employment law principles. The correct approach involves a structured, ongoing process of goal setting, regular feedback, and a comprehensive review that is directly linked to these established goals. This method ensures that employees understand expectations, receive timely guidance, and have a clear basis for their performance evaluation. This aligns with the principles of good management and the implicit requirements of regulatory compliance, which often mandate fair and transparent performance assessment. By focusing on objective criteria and documented progress, this approach minimizes the risk of subjective bias and potential grievances, thereby upholding professional standards and regulatory expectations for supervisors. An incorrect approach that relies solely on annual, retrospective reviews without ongoing dialogue fails to provide employees with the opportunity to correct course or receive support. This can lead to unfair assessments and potential disputes, as employees may feel blindsided by negative feedback. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of commitment to employee development. Another incorrect approach, which involves setting vague or unmeasurable goals, makes objective performance evaluation impossible. This undermines the integrity of the review process and can lead to perceptions of favoritism or arbitrary judgment, violating principles of fairness and transparency expected in professional settings. Finally, an approach that avoids constructive criticism or difficult conversations, even when performance is lacking, is a failure of leadership. It allows underperformance to persist, potentially impacting team morale and operational effectiveness, and is a dereliction of the supervisor's duty to manage performance effectively and ethically. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes clear communication, objective measurement, and consistent application of performance standards. This involves understanding the specific regulatory requirements and organizational policies governing performance management. When faced with implementation challenges, supervisors should seek guidance, ensure documentation is thorough, and maintain a focus on fairness and employee development. The process should be viewed as a continuous cycle of setting expectations, providing support, monitoring progress, and delivering feedback, rather than a singular event. Question 19. The review process indicates that following a significant data center outage, the IT recovery team has proposed a rapid restoration of core business applications. However, concerns have been raised regarding the thoroughness of security validation and data integrity checks within the proposed accelerated timeline. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for operational continuity with regulatory compliance and security best practices? Option A. Focus on restoring the primary functionality of applications, assuming that underlying security configurations remain intact and data is uncorrupted, to expedite the return to service. Option B. Prioritize the immediate restoration of all core applications to meet business demands, deferring detailed security and data integrity checks until after full operational recovery. Option C. Implement a phased restoration of critical applications, with each phase including comprehensive security control validation and data integrity verification before proceeding to the next. Option D. Restore essential IT infrastructure components first, then gradually reintroduce applications while conducting ad hoc security scans and data audits as resources permit. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased restoration of critical applications, with each phase including comprehensive security control validation and data integrity verification before proceeding to the next. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in disaster recovery planning, balancing the urgency of restoring critical operations with the need for thorough testing and validation. The professional challenge lies in making a judgment call that prioritizes both business continuity and security integrity, adhering to regulatory expectations for resilience and data protection. Careful judgment is required to avoid shortcuts that could compromise security or lead to further disruptions. The correct approach involves a phased restoration and validation process. This method is correct because it aligns with the principles of robust disaster recovery and business continuity planning, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory frameworks governing data security and operational resilience. Specifically, it allows for the systematic reestablishment of services, while concurrently verifying that security controls are functioning as intended and that data integrity has been maintained. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of reintroducing vulnerabilities or experiencing secondary failures, thereby upholding the organization's duty of care and compliance obligations. An incorrect approach that bypasses thorough testing of restored systems before full operational reintegration is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes regulatory expectations for maintaining a secure operating environment. By not validating security controls, the organization risks exposing sensitive data or critical systems to new or existing threats, which could lead to data breaches, financial losses, and significant reputational damage. Such an oversight demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a failure to implement adequate safeguards, potentially violating data protection laws and industry best practices. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of restoration over data integrity checks is equally problematic. While rapid recovery is a goal, it must not come at the expense of ensuring that the data itself is accurate, complete, and uncorrupted. Regulatory frameworks often emphasize data integrity as a cornerstone of security and compliance. Failing to verify data integrity post-disaster could lead to operational errors, incorrect decision-making based on flawed data, and potential legal liabilities if the corrupted data impacts customers or stakeholders. A third incorrect approach that focuses solely on restoring core functionality without considering the security implications of the restored environment is also a significant failure. Disaster recovery is not just about getting systems back online, it's about getting them back online securely. Neglecting to reevaluate and re-implement security measures in the restored environment leaves the organization vulnerable. This can lead to a false sense of security and an increased risk of a repeat incident or a new security compromise, directly violating the principle of maintaining a secure and resilient infrastructure. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a risk-based assessment. First, identify critical business functions and their recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO. Second, evaluate the proposed restoration strategies against these objectives, considering both speed and security. Third, consult relevant regulatory requirements and internal policies to ensure compliance. Fourth, engage stakeholders, including IT, security, and business unit leaders, to agree on a balanced approach that mitigates risks while achieving recovery goals. Finally, document the decision-making process and the rationale behind the chosen restoration strategy. Question 20. What factors determine the appropriate level of detail and objectivity required when documenting a security incident for an official report under the Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, regulatory framework? Option A. The supervisor's personal opinion on the most important aspects of the incident and the ease of writing a concise summary. Option B. The desire to present the security team in the most favorable light and minimize any potential criticism. Option C. The perceived severity of the incident and the likelihood of disciplinary action against individuals involved. Option D. The need for a factual, objective, and comprehensive account that supports potential investigations and complies with regulatory mandates for evidence-based reporting. Correct answer is D. The need for a factual, objective, and comprehensive account that supports potential investigations and complies with regulatory mandates for evidence-based reporting. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because the security supervisor must balance the need for thorough and accurate reporting with the potential for bias or misinterpretation, all while adhering to specific regulatory requirements for incident documentation. The supervisor's judgment in selecting and presenting information directly impacts the integrity of the investigation and subsequent actions. The correct approach involves meticulously documenting all observed facts, relevant circumstances, and actions taken, ensuring the report is objective, factual, and free from speculation or personal opinion. This aligns with the core principles of regulatory compliance for security reporting, which mandate accuracy, completeness, and impartiality. Such reporting is crucial for legal defensibility, internal review, and demonstrating due diligence in maintaining security. The Certified Security Supervisor, CSS, framework emphasizes the importance of evidence-based reporting that can withstand scrutiny. An approach that focuses solely on the immediate outcome of the incident, omitting contributing factors or procedural details, fails to meet the regulatory requirement for comprehensive reporting. This omission can lead to incomplete investigations and hinder the identification of systemic issues. An approach that includes subjective interpretations or assumptions about intent without factual basis violates the principle of objectivity. Regulatory frameworks for security reporting strictly prohibit speculation, as it can prejudice investigations and lead to incorrect conclusions. An approach that selectively omits information that might reflect negatively on the security team, even if factually accurate, constitutes a breach of ethical reporting standards and potentially regulatory requirements for transparency. This can undermine trust and prevent necessary improvements. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes factual accuracy, adherence to established reporting protocols, and the principle of objectivity. This involves a systematic review of observations, cross-referencing with available evidence, and structuring the report in a clear, chronological, and unbiased manner, always considering the specific regulatory guidelines applicable to the Certified Security Supervisor (CSS) role.